Welcome to our channel, Behind My Story. Please like, share, and subscribe.
My name is Laura, and as a child, I craved unconditional love. But instead of cuddles and family outings, my lasting memories are of bitter rows. My mom never wanted children, she says. She told me that the only reason she didn't get an abortion was that she found about the pregnancy too late. My dad left when I was very young, which made my mother resentful. She had to stay and be the responsible mom, which she hated. On one occasion, my grandparents took me away, and I remember thinking, this is what family should be like. The relationship dissolved completely when I was a teenager. My mom's first love was always men, and when I was 15, she moved to Africa for a boyfriend without telling me. It's something I found impossible to forgive, especially as there has never been an explanation or even an apology. She has contacted me since, but always asking for money. That's why I made the decision to cut all ties with her. I put my mother's behavior down to a horrible upbringing, but she can't make the same excuses for her father. Dad had a lovely childhood, but he has no emotions or empathy for anyone. We haven't spoken in 7 years. Although she's so close to his parents and they encouraged her and her dad to repair the damaged relationship, it brought her nothing but more hurt. After he left my mom, he went on to have a new family. That was really hard for me to handle when he's made so little effort with me. My issues with my mom and dad have badly affected my mental health all throughout my life. I see a therapist regularly now to try to help me deal with the emotions. When I get married next year, neither of my parents will be invited. I grew up thinking I did something wrong for my parents not to want me. My only regret is not telling my dad how much I hated him. I don't hate my mom. I just feel sorry for her and I wish she could see what she's done. Ending all contact with a parent may sound extreme, but for me, it was an act of self-preservation. My dad left when I was 8, and I haven't spoken to my mom once since I moved to Germany 10 years ago. She wasn't maternal and had a really bad temper, which she took out on me. She would never be affectionate, and I felt unloved. I believe my mother may have had a miserable childhood, which meant she lacked the emotional tools to be a good parent. After I grew up and had my own daughter, our relationship got even worse. My mother never came to see me or her granddaughter, but she did form a close bond with her son's new family. It hurt me that she made an effort to spend time with my brother's children and not mine. Over time, I have come to terms with the fact that she never loved me. I don't hate her or feel sorry for her. I just don't want her in my life anymore. Andy hasn't spoken to mom for 25 years, after they stopped communicating in his early 20s. For him, the problem was a lack of respect and common values. I grew up in a children should be seen and not heard household, where my parents' opinion was the only right one. We would have dinner in silence, and my parents never encouraged me in my interests or activities. He says he was never praised for his achievements, only criticized for doing wrong things. Whatever I did, it was never good enough. If I did well at something, my dad would always have to prove he was better. The house rules were strict, and he was sent to bed by 10 p.m. every night, even at the age of 16. But instead of sleeping, Andy found himself listening to the radio to escape the boredom. He quickly became interested in current affairs and politics, which gave him a new insight into the world. It made me realize that my parents' views were snobby, sexist, and racist. I was never allowed to voice any opinion that contradicted their views or I'd be sent to my room. It made me lose respect for them. Andy and I were living in the same house, but we hadn't had a conversation for over a year. I can't say I regretted not making up with him. He was miserable to be around. Several years later, Andy graduated from university and bought a house. I was so proud, but my mom told me it was horrible. She said it looked like a council house and asked why he wanted to live in a slum. As his career advanced, she became more critical and constantly compared him with his half-brother. I was 21 and felt successful, but she was ashamed of everything I did because it didn't fit her snobbish ideals. Eventually, he stopped contacting both my mother and his brother, and has never looked back. It wasn't really a difficult decision to make because we had nothing in common and they didn't accept me or my life choices. Andy understands why some people see this as a surprising decision, but has no interest in sustaining a relationship for the sake of it. I feel like seeing your parents out of duty is wrong. If you have made no effort to build a relationship with your children, I don't think you can expect them to be there. For other families, the rift is a result of the parents' divorce. Like my friend Helen, she lost contact with 2 of her 4 adult children this year, after ending an emotionally abusive relationship with their father. Since they separated in 2011, it's been a slow process of parental alienation. Her son hasn't spoken to her since last year, and her middle daughter is now ghosting her on every channel of communication. She believes her former partner has used the same manipulation tactics on her children as those that destroyed their marriage. Once the kids got older and she developed her own life and interests, her ex became controlling and tried to stop her from doing the things that she liked. During a period of gaslighting that spanned many years, she says he told lies about her behavior to friends and family. Once he told them she was drunk and suicidal and she had gone missing. In reality, she had gone to the supermarket. When she joined a local band, he told everyone she was crazy and that she wanted to run away and become famous. Over time, her husband's side of the story was believed and Helen began feeling alienated from her family. She sadly lost her mom a few years ago, and her dad is a man's man and took her ex's side. The divorce impacted the children big time and damaged them emotionally. Despite making every effort to build bridges with her children, she admits she doesn't know what their father has told them. He has always made an argument before parties and celebrations to prevent her from coming to the event. He also accused her of having an affair, even though she never cheated on him. The relationships with her 2 estranged children became so strained that she wasn't given a chance to discuss what had happened. The only explanation they've ever given her is that she doesn't care about them or that she treats them as little kids. Though losing contact has been an extremely painful experience for both of us, I don't blame anyone. Not me, not my mom, not Helen, and not her children. It's no one's fault. I can very much relate to how Helen's children felt. They're like goldfish swimming in a tank where someone keeps adding a tiny bit of color every day until they start to see things in a completely different way. I would love a chance to reconnect with my mom, but I can't see how it will happen. At the moment, I feel like I'm standing outside and they're inside a glass room. I really miss my mom, my brother, and definitely my dad.
I am Matthew, 21 years old, and I must tell you something. I am a madman. I need treatment. But what kind of treatment is there for my kind of madness? You see before you a man with torn clothes who speaks to himself all the time. I used to be a doctor, but I left medicine to pursue aromacology. In case you were wondering, aromacology is the study of fragrances, such as scents of flowers and how they affect people. Let me tell you my story. My parents were very proud of me because I was intelligent, well-known, and well-respected at my university. I earned high marks in all my courses. Dad wanted me to join the College of Medicine because he had always dreamed of my becoming a doctor, and I felt that I couldn't deny him that. My parents did their best to make me happy and to help me achieve Dad's dream. But to be honest with you, medicine, engineering, the arts, none of these interested me at all. They weren't my dream. I loved flowers and their fragrances, like rose and honeysuckle. I would extract fragrances from them and give them as gifts to my friends and family. They all really enjoyed these aromatic gifts. My dilemma was that I had to find a way to tell Dad that I would rather study botany, plants, and aromacology, fragrances, over medicine any day. I knew he would think that I was crazy to give up the lofty study of medicine to work with flowers, but what can I say? I have loved flowers and fragrances ever since I was a youngster. I have always been fascinated by exotic flowers and scents. Learning how to make fragrances from flowers required me to meet with a lot of people who worked in this field. One day, I had to face the moment I had been dreading because my parents had arranged a large social gathering to celebrate my success at the university and my joining the College of Medicine. Dad asked me to tell everyone about my ambitions as a doctor. I suddenly knew that the moment had come when I needed to make my startling announcement to my parents. I told the audience I had decided that being a doctor was not for me and that I was going to change my field of study. Dad looked at me with an astonished look on his face, and then he began laughing. He thought I was joking. Then I turned to him and said, "Dad, I'm not joking. I'm serious. I want to study flowers and fragrances, similar to the types of gifts I've given you before." The audience suddenly got very quiet. They could sense that this was an epiphany for my parents. The embarrassment and shock in the air was palpable. Dad looked at me and said with an affected smile, "Matthew, you were born to be a doctor. Forget all this nonsense about silly flowers." A little testily, I said, "Dad, extracting fragrances from flowers is not silly." Dad said, "Bah, forget about that." The party spirit was somewhat subdued after this testy exchange. Regardless, in deference to Dad, I began studying medicine, but most of my energy and attention was directed towards flowers and their fragrances. Sometimes I would spend time with my medical friends, and sometimes with my aromatology friends that I had met earlier. I spent my first year in medical college earning high marks as usual, but I had no passion for it. It neither excited nor interested me. There came a day when I had had my fill of medical studies and just couldn't take it anymore. So I decided to leave the College of Medicine to pursue my true passion, flowers and fragrances. When I told Dad of my decision, he was very upset, cursing at me and accusing me of being mad, insane, crazy. I repeated that I had zero interest in medicine and stated that the true madness was sticking with a field that I really didn't like at all. I moved away from home and stayed with a friend for a while before finally renting and moving into a small apartment. I faced a lot of obstacles in the beginning, but I didn't give up. I set up an arboretum by planting some flowers and nurturing them. I was working on a rare kind of fragrance extracted from a variety of flowers. I had to travel to obtain these specimens. My product fragrances weren't successful at first, but I persisted. Initially, I offered my fragrance products to various factories, but all refused my offer. So I continued in my studies. I worked in many different places. In the evenings, I would spend all my free time doing my experiments. Over time, I grew more proficient in producing unique fragrances. Then one day, I received a phone call from a famous factory. The factory owner told me that he might be interested in working with me, so I sent him some samples of my work, and they delighted him. And I was delighted that he was delighted. Thus began the lucrative stage of my new endeavor. I started earning a decent income and achieved a modicum of success in the end. After a while, I called Dad and asked him to forgive me, and he did, finally realizing that my passions were not necessarily his passions, and that I must pursue what I enjoyed the most. I have my own factory now. I achieved my dream in the end. My advice to you, the readers, is never to give up when pursuing your dreams. With persistence, you will be successful one day. So what do you think? Was I a madman to give up medicine for aromatology? Was I a madman to give up medicine for aromatology?